Now, previous we looked at the standard form for equation of a circle. Standard form for equation of a circle is, again, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And this is in regards if we are given center h comma k and a radius. Now we learned that we can also use the distance formula in order to figure out the radius, which again is the square root of an x minus the other x squared plus y minus the other y squared. So we can always plug in, and we tend to use the center as one of our x values and then a point on the circle as the other x value. So we go through and we solve the distance formula to determine our radius, which we can then plug into our standard equation of a circle. Now, sometimes we are given equations that are not necessarily nice to look at. Now, what they have to do is we have to go through a whole process in order to get our equation into that whole x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So first thing is we have to be aware that it's possible we're going to have to use the process known as completing the square in order to get our equation into standard form. Sometimes we don't have to, and it's nice for us. Now, let's say we want to take this first equation, x squared plus 4x plus 4 plus y squared minus 6y plus 9 equals 36, and get it into our standard form. What I will do is I am actually going to group together. So notice here we have three terms, x squared, 4x4, and then y squared, y, and 9. I can actually group the first three together, and then I will group the next three together. Now, fortunately for us, they already made it nice for us. Now we can factor this trinomial, x squared plus 4x plus 4. Now we have to factor this. X times x makes x squared. And then I need numbers that will multiply 4 and add to 4. So 4 times 1 or 2 times 2. So 2 and 2, they're both positive, so then x plus 2 times x plus 2. Now we're going to do the same thing with y squared over here. We can try and factor this. Again, first times first makes first, so y times y. And then we need the number that will multiply to positive 9, adding to negative 6. So 9 times 1, or 3 times 3 will make 9. In this case, it's going to be minus 3 times minus 3. Gives me 36. So notice with our x's and y's here, we're multiplying the same binomial twice. So what we really have is x plus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared gives me 36. So notice we were able to group the first trinomial together to create our x minus h squared, and then group our y's together to get y minus 3 squared equals 36. So this is now in the correct format. And we can do the same thing with our second option here, x squared minus 10x plus 25 plus y squared plus 14y plus 49 gives me 4. It's already set up where I'm able to group the first three together and the second three together. So here we're going to factor it. So if we're able to come up with the correct format, we know it's going to be x, because x times x gives me x squared. And then I got to come up with a number that will multiply to 25 and add to negative 10. So what number times itself is 25? Well, it's 5. 5 times 5 gives me 25. And then the middle term will give me the sign we have to put. So minus 5. And we're going to add, and we're going to do the same thing here. We're dealing with y. We take the square root of our last number, 7, and then the middle term is going to dictate what it is. So 7 times 7 gives me 49. 7 plus 7 gives me 14. And that is squared equals 4. So again, it's in the correct format. Now let's say we have it a little bit differently. What's the center and the radius of the following circle? X squared plus 4x plus y squared minus 12y minus 41 equals 0. We do not have 6 terms on the left side of the equal sign. We have x squared plus 4x, and we got y squared minus 12y minus 41. Now, if I were to take the square root of 41, our process before said if I take the square root of our last number, 41, and then add it together, I'm supposed to get, in this case, 12. Well, 6.4 plus 6.4 is really 12.8, so that's not going to work. You've got to be a little bit tricky here. So what we have to do is we have to do what's known as completing the square. So what I'm going to do is, first things first, I am just going to make sure x's and y's are on one side, solid numbers are on the other side of the equal sign. So x squared, x, y squared, y, 41. So I'm going to add 41 to both sides first and foremost. So now we have x squared plus 4x, I'm going to leave a little bit of space, plus y squared minus 12y, and again a little bit of space, equals 41. So completing the square, basically the magic number is 2. So if I look at x's, so one time I'm going to take my second x, cut it in half, I get 2, and then I have to square it, it gives me 4. So I'm going to add 4. Then I'm going to do the same thing with my second y. I'm going to cut negative 12 in half. I get negative 6. I square it. And I get 36. So I'm going to add 36. Now again, the rule of math is what you do to one side, you do to the other. So in this case, I added 4 and 36. So I have to add 4 and 36 to the other side as well. So now our new equation is x squared plus 4x plus 4 plus y squared minus 12y plus 36 gives me, and then 41 and 4 and 36 will give me 81. Now I can turn this into we have created a perfect square trinomial for x's. So x, middle term is plus, and the number we got was 2. So whatever number I cut in half is what I put in parentheses. So x cut in half, I got positive 2, so x plus 2 squared. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the y's. So we know we have y, and then when I cut the negative 12 in half, I got minus 6. So y minus 6 squared equals 81. So now we are in the correct format, the standard form of equation of a circle, and we can use this to determine the center. Again, center is the x and y values just with reversed or opposite signs. So positive 2 is negative 2, negative 6 is 6, so there's my center. And then the radius is the square root. So square root of 81. So the square root is going to be 9. So there is my center and radius after using the process known as completing the square in order to get my equation into standard form. Now 3 says identify center and radius. So what I have to do is I have to essentially do the same thing. X squared plus 20x plus, or x squared minus 20x plus y squared plus 6y gives me 35. Notice we don't have 6 terms on the left-hand side, so I'm going to use completing the square. So I take the second x, divide by 2, and I get negative 10. I square it, and I add it to both sides. So I have to add 100. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the second y. 6, I cut it, and I divide it by 2, I get 3, and I square it, so that's 9. So I add 9. And because I added 100 and 9, so I have to add 109 on both sides. So the new equation is x squared minus 20x plus 100 plus y squared plus 6y plus 9 gives me, and when I add them together, 144. So if I look at the trinomial for x and the trinomials for y, the letter we're dealing with in this part is x, and the number we got when we cut in half was minus 10 squared. And then same thing with the y. So the letter we're dealing with is y. When I cut 6 in half, I got a positive 3. And squaring that is 144. So the center is just the opposite values. So the center, x value, negative 10 is positive, becomes positive 10. Positive 3 means y value is negative 3. And then the radius, square root of 144 is 12. So that is the center and radius for that particular equation. Letter B is a little bit different here, 3b, because we have a numerical value of 19 halves as our end of term, whereas here we just have x's and y's. So in terms of completing the square, we're set up nicely. We got x's and y's on one side, we got the number on the other. So what I have to do here is, again, I take the second x, divide by 2. So it's 3 over 2, and then I have to square it. And again, whenever I square a fraction, I square both numbers. So 9 over 4. And I add it with my x's. And I'll do the same thing with my y's. I cut negative 5 in half, so I get negative 5 over 2. And I square it, so I get 25 over 4. And I add it to that side. And because I add it to both sides, I add 9/4 and 25/4 to one side, I have to add them to the other. So my equation is now x squared minus 3x plus 9 over 4 plus y squared minus 5y plus 25 over 4 gives me 19 over 2 plus 9 over 4 plus 25 over 4. So on this side, again, the perfect square trinomial is the letter we're dealing with, x, and then whatever we got when we cut in half, negative minus 3 over 2 squared. And then the letter on this side we're dealing with is y. And the number we got when we cut negative 5 in half is minus 5 over 2 squared equals, and then what I can do is I can just add all these fractions together. So 19 halves plus 9/4 plus 25/4 gives me 18. So we have a nice solid number, and what we want to do is we want to identify center and radius. Center, again, x value is just the opposite of what we got with the x. So 3 over 2, 5 over 2, since they're both negatives, the center has a positive value. And then the radius, square root of 18. So again, that is using completing the square method in order to get a really wonky circular equation into the standard form of equation in order to identify center and radius.